I froze, mid-step, staring at the spilled coffee that was slowly creeping across the linoleum. My face must have looked ridiculous, flushed, eyes wide, hands trembling from some combination of shock and caffeine withdrawal. And then I heard it, the soft, amused laugh behind me. "You should see your face right now." Her voice, it wasn't sharp, not teasing like a friend's, not judgmental, just warm, lightly amused, like sunlight brushing against my skin on a cold morning. I turned, and there she was, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, head tilted slightly, smiling in a way that made my chest tighten without warning. She was impossibly graceful. Mid-40s, maybe, though she carried herself like age didn't exist. Her hair was streaked with strands of silver, but the rest fell in soft waves around her face. Her eyes, God, her eyes, were the kind that looked right through you and somehow made you feel both naked and safe at the same time. Sorry," I mumbled, suddenly aware of how ridiculous I must look, crouched like some clumsy teenager. I was 20, but standing here in her kitchen, I felt every bit like a kid who had wandered into the wrong room. "Relax," she said, tilting her head again, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Her fingers lingered, just for a heartbeat, and my stomach flipped. "It's just coffee." I wanted to apologize again, but my words stalled somewhere between admiration and nerves. Instead, I stood awkwardly, feeling the tension in my shoulders, noticing the subtle warmth radiating from her presence. She moved with a confidence that made my every movement feel painfully conspicuous, and yet I wanted to watch her, to memorize the slight curve of her smile, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. She came closer, barefoot, leaving tiny prints on the cool floor. I wanted to say something clever, something that would mask how flustered I was, but I couldn't. All I could do was watch her, and maybe, just maybe, hope she didn't notice how easily she'd unraveled me. "You always wear that expression when you're nervous?" she asked, her voice soft, teasing, and entirely disarming. She leaned on the counter, just slightly too close. The scent of her, cinnamon and something darker, like rain on asphalt, hit me in a way that made my knees threaten mutiny. Maybe?" I admitted, scratching the back of my neck. My words sounded silly, empty, but she didn't seem to mind. Instead, she laughed again, lighter this time, and the sound wrapped around me like a quiet promise I wasn't ready to understand yet. For a long moment, there was nothing but the soft hum of the fridge and the distant sound of the street outside. I could feel her eyes on me, patient, warm, but not demanding. I wanted to say something, anything, but the right words were lodged somewhere deep in my chest, tangled with every other thing I couldn't say out loud. And then, just as my courage, or foolishness, was building, the doorbell rang. Sharp. Insistent. Breaking the fragile, suspended world we had carved out in that small kitchen. She glanced toward the door, a flicker of curiosity crossing her features, and I realized, with a sudden jolt, that this small, quiet moment, this strange, slow-burning tension between us, was about to be interrupted. Her gaze flicked back to mine, just for a second, and in that look, I swore I saw something unspoken, a question, a warning, a spark. Something that made my heart skip and my stomach tighten in a way I couldn't ignore. I swallowed, suddenly aware that nothing would ever feel the same after this day, and that maybe, just maybe, I didn't want it to. The doorbell had rung again, sharper this time, dragging me out of the quiet haze that had settled over the kitchen. She sighed, glancing toward the hallway, and I saw it then, just a flicker, quick and fleeting, a weight she carried behind her eyes. Something unspoken, something that hinted at years lived with careful restraint. "I should get that," she said, her voice softer than usual, almost hesitant. But she didn't move immediately, letting a beat linger between us. A beat that was charged with the kind of electricity that makes you aware of every inhale, every pulse in your body. I shifted, suddenly aware of how ridiculous I was, standing too close, still warmed by her presence. And then, almost without thinking, I asked, "Do you live here alone?" Her shoulders stiffened just a fraction. "No," she said carefully, almost evasively. "Not really." I caught the brief shadow that crossed her face, something I couldn't name, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, like I was prying too much. But the curiosity was unrelenting. I had always been drawn to puzzles, and she was one I couldn't stop trying to understand. I know it's weird, I said, fumbling. Me asking? I don't know. You seem different than anyone I've ever met. Her eyes softened, a subtle shift that made my chest tighten. Different how? I hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't sound foolish. Like you've been through things. You've seen a lot, but you still laugh. Still notice little things. My words were clumsy, but I didn't care. There was something about being honest, even if it scared me. She looked away then, glancing toward the living room, and I thought I saw the faintest flicker of regret, or maybe longing. It's complicated, she said, voice low, almost drowned by the quiet hum of the apartment. Some things, some people, leave marks you can't just erase. And there it was. The invisible wall, the barrier I wasn't supposed to cross. She was my friend's mom. She was older, wiser, maybe carrying wounds I couldn't even begin to understand. And yet, standing here, inches apart in the soft morning light, it didn't feel impossible. It felt inevitable. The tension thickened when her hand brushed mine. Accidental, she claimed, but I wasn't convinced. Her fingers lingered, a mere heartbeat, and I felt a jolt I couldn't ignore. My mind screamed caution, but my body betrayed me, craving just a little more of that warmth. I remember your birthday once, I said, almost as if to distract myself from the charge between us. You made these cookies. You said I'd burn the house down if I tried to bake them myself. She smiled then, genuinely, a little wistful. I did, didn't I? And in that moment, standing in the quiet kitchen, with sunlight painting stripes across the floor and the faint smell of coffee still lingering, something unspoken passed between us. A connection that felt dangerous, thrilling, and utterly magnetic all at once. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The air was thick, filled with unspoken questions, suppressed desires, and memories neither of us dared to voice. And then, just before she finally moved toward the hallway, her fingers brushed mine again, this time longer, and I felt a pulse of promise in that silent touch. Something had begun. And I knew, without a doubt, that nothing would ever be simple again. The next few days were strange. Electric. Every glance felt like a risk. Every casual touch, the brush of a hand when she handed me a mug, the way her elbow bumped mine in the hallway, sent my pulse into overdrive. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I didn't want to ruin it, whatever it was. I was in the kitchen again, pretending to look for sugar, when I heard the click of keys at the door. Her husband, or ex, depending on the day, was home earlier than expected. I froze, sugar box in hand, pretending nothing was wrong, while my chest slammed against my ribs in warning. Hey, you're early, she said, voice calm, just a little too calm. Her eyes flicked to mine, and there it was again, the small, almost imperceptible warning, the same one she had given me before. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Her husband's voice followed, cheerful, oblivious. I thought I'd catch you before you left for work. He didn't see me. He never did. She smiled politely, tilting her head toward the door. Oh, hi. Just finishing up some things. Her hand brushed mine again as she passed me the mug. I couldn't look away, though I wanted to. I wanted to disappear. Later that evening, I walked home in the dark, my thoughts spinning. I replayed the moments in the kitchen, her laughter, the touch of her fingers. Every rational thought I had screamed, stop, this is wrong, but I couldn't. I wanted more. The next day, I tried to keep my distance. Honest, careful. But she found me sitting on the porch, staring at nothing, pretending I wasn't waiting for her. You're quiet today, she said, tilting her head, eyes scanning my face. Not like you. I laughed, weakly, and looked away. Just tired, I guess. Her gaze lingered. I get it. Life piles up. We didn't say much after that. Just sat there, the faint hum of the street below, the warm fading light brushing against our skin. And then, she moved closer. Just a fraction. Enough that I could feel the heat radiating off her, enough that my hands itched to reach for hers again. I shouldn't, she whispered, voice barely audible. I wanted to finish the sentence for her. We shouldn't. I shouldn't want this. But instead I just nodded, caught between wanting and knowing I should walk away. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. A message from my friend, her son. Hey, are you at my mom's? I left something there. I glanced up. Her eyes met mine, wide, and something unspoken passed between us. Panic? Guilt? Desire? I couldn't tell. My stomach churned, and I felt trapped in this moment we hadn't agreed to, this tension that was pulling us closer even as we tried to resist. Maybe you should go, she said softly, stepping back, her fingers lingering in the air where mine had brushed hers a second ago. I didn't move. I couldn't. And just like that, the quiet porch, the fading sun, the tension, the longing, everything hung suspended. A single, fragile question hovered between us. Can we stop this, before it's too late? I couldn't breathe. Not fully. Not until she laughed at something trivial, something I didn't even catch, and my chest constricted in a way that surprised me. It wasn't just laughter, it was her laughter, the kind that had a private rhythm, the kind that made the world shrink until only she existed. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to read, but my eyes kept darting toward her. She was talking to her neighbor about some mundane thing, and I could feel the heat crawling up my neck as the neighbor's hand brushed hers. Just a polite touch. But it felt like a blade, slicing through the fragile calm I'd built around myself. I clenched my hands in my lap, trying to force the irrational jealousy down. It's nothing. It's normal. But my mind wouldn't listen. Every brush of her fingers, every smile, every glance not aimed at me felt like a stake in my chest. And then she caught me staring. Her eyes softened, but there was a question there, unspoken, sharp, intimate. Are you okay? I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. Yeah, I muttered. I'm fine. My voice cracked slightly, betraying me. I hated that. I hated that she could see straight through me. She walked closer, slow, deliberate, and my stomach rolled. You don't have to say that, she whispered, as if she knew my thoughts before I even thought them. She sat on the armrest near me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. That touch, it should have been innocent, but every nerve in my body screamed otherwise. I swallowed, fingers twitching against the fabric of the couch. I couldn't finish. I couldn't say I don't want anyone else near you. I couldn't admit how much I was losing control. Her gaze flicked down at my hands, then back up, steady and knowing. You like me, she said softly, almost a statement, almost a question. My chest tightened, heat flooding my face. I looked away, unable to meet her eyes. I shouldn't, I whispered, voice low, guilty, desperate. I know I shouldn't. Why not? She asked, her tone careful, almost vulnerable, and my heart ached at the fragility beneath her calm. I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd been thinking about her since the first morning I'd seen her, how every accidental touch had felt like a promise, how I hated that the world had rules that made this impossible. But instead I shook my head, words failing me. She reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. Her hand lingered, and it was enough to ignite a fire I couldn't put out. I wanted to lean into it, to close the distance, to let myself fall. But fear held me back. Fear of getting caught, of hurting someone, of ruining everything. She began, voice trembling slightly now, eyes glimmering in the dim light. I can't ignore this either. Our breaths mingled, heavy, shallow. The room was silent except for the quiet thrum of tension between us, thick, urgent, and terrifying. And then, just as I was about to close the distance, about to let the longing win, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, hesitation flashing across her face. I saw it, the other life waiting for her. And suddenly, the moment hung in balance, fragile as glass. I didn't move. She didn't move. The space between us vibrated with everything unsaid, everything wanted, everything forbidden. And in that pause, I realized, one wrong step, one decision, and nothing would ever be the same. I thought the moment on the couch had been private. That fragile, suspended bubble between us had felt sacred. But I was wrong. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, coffee in hand, and froze. Her son, my friend, was sitting at the table, phone in hand, eyes narrowed. "You too, you're right?" His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut through the quiet hum of the apartment. My stomach dropped. My coffee trembled in my hand. She stiffened, eyes widening, mouth opening slightly as if to explain, to deny, but no words came. I hadn't imagined it. Someone had overheard, had put the pieces together. And suddenly, everything we'd been dancing around, the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the quiet mornings filled with tension, was no longer safe. I don't know what you mean," she said, voice tight, controlled, but her fingers betrayed her, twisting the edge of the countercloth nervously. "You do," he said, and I saw the hurt flicker in his expression, not just at me, but at her. You're acting like you're not, but I see it." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that we hadn't done anything, at least nothing that mattered, but the words caught in my throat. Every heartbeat felt loud, betraying me. She stepped closer, almost shielding me, eyes glinting with a mixture of defiance and fear. "It's complicated," she whispered, barely audible, yet sharp enough that my chest ached. "We didn't plan this." His gaze flicked between us, hurt softening into confusion, anger, disbelief. "Complicated? You're my mom. And you," he pointed at me, trembling slightly, "you're my friend. How could you?" Her hand brushed mine for a second, subtle, desperate, and I felt the pull I hadn't wanted to admit yet. Desire and guilt tangled in my chest, a knot I couldn't untie. "I didn't choose this," she said, voice breaking slightly, a tremor I hadn't heard before. "It just happened." "I didn't mean to, you didn't mean to," he interrupted, voice rising. "Do you even know what you're doing? Do you even care?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came. I wanted to explain, to plead, to scream, but I couldn't. There was nothing I could say that would untangle the mess we'd created. She looked at me then, and for a fleeting second, vulnerability cracked the wall she'd built around herself. "I care," she whispered. "More than I should. More than I ever wanted to admit." And just like that, everything shifted. The kitchen, the morning light, the quiet tension between us, all of it was replaced by a hurricane of reality. We were no longer just two people teetering on the edge of something forbidden. We were exposed. Vulnerable. Reckless. And the consequences of wanting each other, of admitting it, were suddenly no longer hypothetical. I swallowed hard, feeling my pulse hammer in my ears, and realized that nothing would ever feel safe again. Not our mornings. Not our touches. Not the small, quiet universe we built between us. And yet, I couldn't stop looking at her. Couldn't stop wanting her. Even if it meant the world we knew was crumbling. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional car passing outside. I could feel her eyes on me, heavy, searching, and it made my chest tighten in a way that was almost unbearable. I can't keep pretending," she whispered, stepping closer. Her voice wavered, but there was an edge of determination in it too. Us, whatever it is, it's real. And hiding it isn't helping anyone." I swallowed hard. My hands shook not from fear, but from the intensity of everything I wanted to say. All the words I'd rehearsed, all the warnings I'd tried to believe, evaporated the moment she looked at me like that. Vulnerable. Afraid. Wanting me. "I've been trying," I admitted, voice rough. "Trying to stay away. Trying not to." My throat tightened. "Not to want you. But I can't. She reached for my hand, tentative at first, then firm. Her fingers threaded through mine, and suddenly the whole apartment felt smaller, warmer, and impossibly intimate. "I know," she said. "I can feel it too. The weight of it, the truth, the danger, the impossibility, pressed against my ribs." Her hand was steady, grounding me, and yet every nerve in my body screamed with longing. I wanted to pull her close, to forget the world, to ignore everything that said we shouldn't. "I don't care," I said, almost without thinking. "I don't care what anyone thinks. I want this. I want you." Her eyes glimmered with something I couldn't name, fear, relief, desire, maybe all of it, and she laughed softly, a sound that was fragile and unsteady. "You're insane," she whispered. "But maybe I am too." We stood there, hands clasped, hearts hammering, the distance between us collapsing until there was nothing left but the space we made for each other. It was messy. It was frightening. And it was utterly real. "I can't promise it'll be easy," she said, voice low, trembling. "I can't promise there won't be fallout. People will see, people will talk, I know," I said. "But I don't care. I just—" My words failed me, so I leaned closer, letting my forehead rest against hers. "I just want you." For a long moment, we stayed like that, breathing each other in, tasting the quiet tension, feeling the pull that had been building for weeks. And in that silence, I realized we understood each other in a way no one else could. Every hesitation, every glance, every brush of our hands, it all meant something now. The world outside still existed, still threatened, still waited to punish us for crossing invisible lines. But in that small bubble of shared space, we had chosen each other. Her lips hovered near mine, close enough to feel the warmth, the pulse, the promise. I could lean in. She could pull away. The choice was ours, and ours alone. And then the sound of her phone buzzing shattered the moment. She glanced at it, hesitation flashing across her features. I knew, whatever she decided, whatever we chose, things would never be the same again. But for now, we had this. And that was enough. The city was quiet that evening, rain tapping softly against the windows, painting streaks of silver across the glass. We sat together on the couch, hands still entwined, neither of us speaking. Words felt unnecessary. They always did, in moments like this, when everything worth saying was already in the touch, the shared breath, the warmth pressed against my palm. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw her without walls. The traces of fear, of restraint, of past regrets, everything that had made her careful and untouchable, were softened by something else, a quiet acceptance, a willingness to let herself feel, even if it terrified her. "I don't know what comes next," she said finally, voice low, uncertain yet calm. "I don't know how the world will react, or if we'll regret this, but I know I don't want to hide anymore." I squeezed her hand, heart hammering. "Then we'll face it together. No pretending, no running, no hiding. We'll figure it out. One day at a time." She smiled then, small, fragile, but real. A smile that reached her eyes and touched something deep inside me. The tension that had coiled in my chest for weeks began to unravel, replaced by a warmth I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Safe. Seen. Wanted. We didn't need a grand declaration, or a dramatic scene, or anyone else's approval. All that mattered was the quiet certainty we shared in that apartment, the simple truth that we had chosen each other despite everything that said we shouldn't. And yet, life wasn't paused. There were still responsibilities, still judgment, still moments where the world would intrude on this fragile connection. But for now, that didn't matter. We had a beginning. A chance. A promise to explore what had always felt inevitable, even when it scared us most. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I rested mine atop hers, breathing her in. The rain outside softened into a gentle drizzle, the city lights shimmering against the wet streets, and I realized something. Love, messy, complicated, impossible as it seemed, was always worth the risk. We stayed there like that for a long while, not speaking, letting the quiet carry us. Every heartbeat, Every brush of fingers, every small shift in our bodies spoke louder than words ever could. And though uncertainty lingered at the edges, it didn't diminish the truth between us, that we had finally allowed ourselves to feel, to choose, to exist together in this fleeting, imperfect moment. When the rain began to lighten, she lifted her head, eyes catching mine. "Are we ready for tomorrow?" she asked softly. I smiled, feeling the gravity of everything behind that single question. "As ready as we'll ever be," I said. And just like that, the future seemed vast, unknown, and terrifying, and utterly ours.